So we're starting off 2020 with some Valentine's projects, and today we're going to put together our Loveland Royal Cottage. This is fit for a queen, king, prince, or princess. A great little gift, would make a wonderful little centerpiece for a girl's birthday or even a boy's birthday, especially if you jazz it up with some appropriate colors. But anyway, let's just jump right in here. One thing that I really suggest you do, and this goes for all of our projects, is just kind of lay things out, just kind of like how I do, just to make things run a little bit smoother. I always kind of do a visual assembly, meaning I kind of look at all the pieces and try to figure out what goes where, kind of lay it on top of the coordinating pieces on top of each other, just so that everything is kind of organized. And then I just decide, well, where am I going to start? And today we're going to start on some simple things just to kind of get them out of the way, and then we'll kind of progress and finish it up. So the thing that kind of stood out for me, simple things here, are the little wheels for our carriage. So we're going to start with that. And you're going to need these pieces here. Okay, so obviously there's 4 wheels, 2 sides, everything's kind of joined together. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to glue, in my case, this is white glitter to, in my case, a purple piece here. Now there are 2 different sizes of wheels, so make sure that you get the correct sizes for each specific wheel. There's one larger one smaller one. Okay, so let's go ahead and just get this glued into place. We'll just start with some simple things and work our way through the rest of the project. Okay, now we're using a little bit of gold foil to make the wheels a little bit stronger too. Now you'll notice that there are some holes on this piece. You want to match that up with the holes on this piece here. In my case, it's a purple piece here. Okay, and I did hit this with some ink as well. Some nice purple lavender ink. Okay, and if you want, you can kind of just tuck this underneath your mat, let it dry nice and flat. Okay, so just move right on to the next one and try to get that glue out to the edges. I'm not so concerned about getting it in every single little nook and cranny here, just as long as it sticks, but definitely work some of that glue out to the edge so that it doesn't come peeling apart later on. Okay, just get that lined up with the little holes there, because we're going to have a little bit of gold showing through these little cutouts here once we get that onto the other one. Okay, and I'm just going to do all these with you. This is my first crafty project for this year. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our gold piece onto the red piece. This is the main piece here. You obviously want to match it up with the little cutouts of the hearts here. Okay, so just kind of rotate that until it looks like it's sitting accurately. So let's get our glue on this piece here. There we go. And kind of need to rotate that a little bit just to make sure that the hearts are nicely aligned. And of course, I need to do that again. Of all days, usually I have trouble with foil sticking. It always wants to slide around, and today, of course, it doesn't want to do that, so go figure. Okay, so that's good right there. Got a little bit of glue kind of seeped out in the center there. That's okay. Most of this is going to be covered up anyway. Okay, so let's grab the larger wheel now and get our glue on that. Kind of dab the center there so it doesn't squirt out like it did the first time. Get those hearts nice and lined up, just like that. And press that down. Okay. And we have this little embellishment here for the center, and that's going to fit in like a nice little puzzle piece. Okay, and you want to make sure that you grab the right one. There we go. And that's going to go right on there. So if you grab one of them and it kind of doesn't want to fit, just grab the other one. It probably isn't exactly symmetrical. Okay, let's pop that right into place there. Try to get it nice and aligned. There we go. And I did actually emboss this piece here, as well as some of the other pieces, as you can see. I ran those through my Sizzix Texture Boutique. Okay, so that is one side. Let's get those wheels back out, and we can affix those to this piece here. Now, when you're applying this, you want to make sure that you get it nice and centered so that you've got a nice even border in gold, in my case, around these little hearts here. Okay, so let's get our glue on this piece. Now this we're going to have to be patient with because I'm gluing cardstock or pattern paper to foil. So we'll get it in place and we'll just leave it sit. Try not to mess around with it too much. Okay, and just remember to try to place this so that you've got a nice even gold, in my case gold, border around those hearts, and then also just trying to make sure that you've got it lined up nicely around the perimeter as well. I'm going to give that a press. This is going to want to slide around, so I'm going to take my time with this. That looks really pretty. And then as soon as I'm done with this larger wheel, I'm going to tuck this back underneath my mat, and that will help it dry nice and flat while making sure that this doesn't slide around on the foil here. Okay, you want to make sure that you get it down correctly the first time. Otherwise, if you spread it around too much, that glue, sometimes when you get it on the foil, it doesn't really want to come off. You can try a slightly damp rag, but even then, I noticed that it kind of messes up the paper a little bit. Okay, so there's wheel section number one, all put together. I'm going to tuck this underneath my mat and let it set while we move on to the same thing over here on this side. We'll do this one more time together, just to make sure that you get it right. I'm going to start with this section here. This is my white glitter section. And again, you want to align this with the existing little holes on your pattern piece or solid colored piece, whichever you decide to use. Get that nice and lined up, press that down. Make sure that it's nicely aligned all the way around. And I noticed that cutting machines sometimes, it's one of their weaknesses, is cutting circles. They do a pretty good job. It used to be really bad back in the day when we were all using Cricut expressions. They were not the best circle makers. Okay, and again, just kind of lining this up with the little holes on the pattern piece so that beautiful gold shows through. There we go. Just like that. And I'm going to tuck both of these underneath my mat, let them flatten out a bit. And same thing that we did with the previous one. I'm moving on to my gold foil piece here. And we'll get that in place. Remember, there's a small one and there's a large one, so don't get them mixed up. This one should fit perfectly right over these little hearts here, just like that. Okay, and grab the large one and get that into place. And then, like I said, we're just going to kind of go through things systematically, do some simple things, eliminate some pieces, and then, you know, if you get rid of some of the easier stuff, the rest of it doesn't seem as difficult or confusing because there's less pieces left. And that just kind of makes the process run a little more smoothly. It's a little more logical, I guess. I like being logical and methodical about things. Here we go. Okay, and again, just get that nice and lined up with this section here. Should fit exactly. Here we go. Just like that. Now grab those two other wheels, and just like we did the first time, I want to make sure that we're leaving a little bit of a border inside of the hearts so that the layer that goes just below this one shows through ever so slightly. Okay, so before you commit, just make sure that you've got it nice and lined up like so. There we go. Oops. See, that was kind of slipping around a little bit. So just be careful if you're using gold foil like I am here. And the next one. And then our wheels are pretty much done. And we'll put those on our actual carriage later on in the process here, once we actually build it. Okay. And get that nice and lined up. And press down. There we go. Perfect. Okay. That looks great. And I'm going to tuck this underneath my mat as well. So you can see here, we've got both of these all done. Let's put those underneath our mat, let that dry nice and flat while we move on to the next section here. Okay, so we're going to continue kind of working on more paper piecing stuff, and we're going to work on the front, well, the two sides, I should say, the two sides of our little carriage. And of course, you can see here, we've got the main piece, and we've got these, which I did in a gold foil. Let me tuck my chair in a little bit. I feel so far away here. Okay. So you can see this little shape here and how that's going to get glued down. So we're going to get that into position and throw the rest of the little embellishments on the front of this into place and do the same thing on the other side. So get your glue on here. Don't go too heavy on the glue, nice and easy. There we go. Make sure you get it out to the very ends here so it doesn't come pulling away. And I'm kind of looking at these little spiky parts of this design here up on the top left, getting that aligned. And then down here, you want to make sure that it's nice and flush with the bottom as well. That is a good indicator that you've got it in the right spot. You can give it a little bit of a nudge up or down, left or right, whatever you need to do to get it into its correct destination here. And we'll move on to the next one. And you can see how quickly these pieces are starting to get used up. So we're kind of just working on the details here, and then we're going to start working on structural stuff here momentarily. Sometimes, if I haven't crafted in a little while, I like to start with some simple things just to get a feel for my glue before I start putting together the actual structural stuff, which is probably less forgiving and probably a little more important to make sure you get that right. Okay, so we got that in place here. All right, now we've got some little overlays here for our windows. We've got some beautiful turquoise vellum that we're going to put behind here, so when this lights up, it looks nice and pretty. So of course, this will double as not only a gift box, but you can also, once you're done with that, use it as a little luminary, or vice versa, whichever way you want to do it. Okay, so we'll get that little heart-shaped overlay in place and do the same thing on the other side. And we've got a beautiful little door get that in place, and then we're going to repeat this process one more time for the other side of our carriage. Okay, and I did also, as you can see, I mentioned this before, I did emboss the gold piece with a tiny dot embossing folder. I believe it's a Tim Holtz by Sizzix. Okay, and now we've got 2 layers for this door. I'm going to start by putting the gold piece down first, and then we have a white glitter piece that's going to go over this. The white glitter piece is a little bit smaller, and that is just by design to make sure that you don't really see. Well, it helps hide one of the sections here. I'll explain that in just a moment. Okay, so now this we're going to put down, and you want to make sure that these little cutouts here almost look like little teardrops are matching up with the little teardrops on the main section here. And then also just make sure that the foot of the door is nice and flush with the very bottom, or as close to it as possible. There we go, just like that. Okay, that looks nice. And let's do something simple here. I've got a nice purple little heart. Just find there's 2 of these, and the only 2 little hearts that are like this, there's a little cutout right below this little heart-shaped piece of the gold part of the door, where it kind of helps you line up that purple piece. Okay, and then we've got this little piece here, which is done in a white glitter. Okay, and you can see how it kind of, how do I explain this? It does kind of go over the gold a little bit by maybe, I don't know, 1/16 of an inch. So you still want to get your glue on pretty much this entire thing. And then we're going to lay it right on there. And now if you are embossing the gold piece like I did, depending on what type of embossing you're using, anytime you try to glue something on top of something that's embossed, it may not grab as much of the surface area. So with that said, you want to make sure that you are getting enough glue on there so that the parts that it is making contact with, it's going to get a good hold. Okay, so that's kind of what I had to do. I'm just going to press this down and hold it for a few moments. Let's take a look at that and make sure that that looks good, nice and lined up. There we go. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And you can see there that little area down at the bottom is starting to peel off because it's not making full contact with the gold piece because of the raised embossing pieces. So you do want to be a little more patient while this sets. And actually, once you have it in place, best thing to do probably is to tuck it underneath your mat and let your mat do the work for you as far as keeping that all in place. Okay, so that just leaves, same thing here. Now, obviously, we've already gone through this, so you don't need to watch me if you don't want to. This would be a good point to pause and go ahead and do it, and then scrub forward to the next part. The next thing I'm going to do is, what am I going to do next? I'm probably going to put the lid together. So as soon as you see, as you're scrubbing, as soon as you see me transition to something different, that's your cue to play and continue on with the assembly. Otherwise, you're welcome to hang out with me while I do this one more time here. Okay. And again, just kind of looking at the little pointy sections here on the top left, using that as my initial guide for placement, and just giving things a little nudge here or there if necessary. There we go. And it's interesting how the second time around on the other side, things tend to kind of flow a little bit quicker. And that is the beauty of experience. Okay. There we go. Should be a pretty quick piece to put together. I can't imagine that this is going to take more than maybe an hour, but that is not much of a commitment for something that's going to turn out to look as cool as this once all said and done. Okay, let's get our little overlays for our little windows here. Go easy on the glue. You don't want it squirting out all over the place. And just match that up with the existing cutout, just like that. Press it down. Grab my other one. And as you can imagine, you know, you don't have to do it in this order. Just, I don't even know if there's any rhyme or reason as to why, you know, I put the gold on first and then the little window pieces. It just kind of, it's just the natural flow based on who knows what. Randomness of the universe, I guess. Okay, let's get our door in place. You want to do the gold piece first, obviously. And then the white's going to go on top of that. And try to get some glue on these small little details here on the door so that those don't accidentally snap off or get ripped off. You want them to be laying nice and flat if possible. And again here, make sure you're flush with the bottom and then that the little teardrop cutouts here match up with the teardrop cutouts on our gold piece. And it looks like it's pretty darn close flush to the bottom. Maybe just a sliver of that paper is still showing through, and that's totally fine. Okay, so I've got the other overlay for the window in place. Now I'm just going to put my little heart in place, just like we did the first time. Go easy on the glue there. And again, there's a little indicator there for the top of the heart, the little valley in the heart, just to kind of help you make sure that you get things nice and symmetrical so that both sides are consistent. And then finally, let's get our overlay for the door in place. There we go. And I'd probably grab the little feet here. Oops. And just lay it down. It wants to kind of pull itself inward. Just force it apart and press that into place. Again, because because I'm gluing this down onto an embossed surface, I need to just kind of give it an extra second or two to make sure that it grips. And that should do it. Okay, so both sides are done. Again, I'm going to put this underneath my mat and let the mat kind of hold things in place for a little bit. And in the meantime, I can do a few more simple things before we get into the meat of our assembly. So we've got the front and the back here, and this is the top for the little lid. We'll worry about that in just a moment here. But for now, what we can do is we can take this piece. This piece is going to go on like this with this little section at the bottom. Okay, so let's just get this in place so that this is nice and ready to get glued into place when the time arrives. Okay, and just try to make sure that you get it nice and aligned up and down. Since it's the only guide and reference we have here is the circle, and you could easily kind of skew it or tilt it incorrectly if you don't pay attention. And I think that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good, I'd say. All right, and we can flip this over. We've got a little piece of vellum that we're going to put right there, I believe. Yep. So just do a little bit of glue around the perimeter of the cutout there, and just make sure that you're covering the entire cutout so that when we flip this over, we see a nice, beautiful piece of vellum sticking through there. This is eventually going to go onto the back of our little carriage, okay? So that's that. Now we've got this little piece. This is the tail of our carriage. Let's just take, in my case, the gold foil piece and glue it onto our pattern piece just to get that out of the way. Just like that. And then it's going to get glued onto the back. It's basically like the little hitch. I think that's the back. Yeah, that's the back. Okay, so we'll put that off to the side. And at this point, you can go ahead and put together the main structure here, which is this piece here. Okay, so what I want to do, obviously, and something that you can probably do before you start anything, is go through all your pieces, and anything that has little score marks on it, just go ahead and fold everything at the score marks just to get it ready. Just like that. It's a pretty simple little piece to put together. It's just a nice rectangle, a dimensional rectangle, and should not be difficult at all to assemble. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this large piece here. With this is the lid, and I'm just going to start by putting glue on this little tab here, getting that glue out to the edge. Oh. And we'll bring this in. The reason I folded this over is just so that it's easier for me to get my thumb and my finger in there so I can press. So just kind of move that out of the way to make this part of the assembly easier. Okay, just give that a nice press, nice and easy. And it shouldn't take more than a few seconds. Whenever we're working on assembling structural stuff like this, and I see this very often, especially from newbies, people that are new to dreaming tree. Sometimes they get a little frustrated because, well, the gluing just didn't pan out the way that they'd hoped. So there's glue on this tab here. I'm going to tuck it behind, and then I'm going to press that in place just like that. Anyway, as I was saying, for new people to this, I think the biggest problem that they're going to run into is using too much glue, and the paper then kind of warps, and it takes forever for things to hold. You get glue that spews out everywhere. So my biggest tip I can give you, and I actually started working on a video to discuss these tips, is use as little glue as necessary. Okay, so let's get some glue on this tab here, going very easy on the glue, and I'm spreading it out with the tip of my nozzle and then kind of dabbing it with my finger as well. Then we'll pull this in right onto that tab and just press and hold that in place while it sets. Give that a second. Okay. And then we can move on to our final tab here. And I'm just throwing a little bit of glue on there, and then I'm going to use my finger to spread that out to the edges so that I don't have to push this too far out of the way and risk this part kind of peeling off. Okay, so I'm taking this tab here, or this section here, and pushing it up against that little triangular tab that we just put our glue on. And just press and hold that in place for a moment. Let that set, and then we'll close her up. There we go. Okay, so now all that's left to do is apply glue to these three long tabs here, and we'll close this up. Try to make sure that you get glue on the entire tab here. I'm going very thin, and then once I get it on the meat of the tab, I will do a thin little line right along the edge, and I will spread that glue out nice and thin right out to the very, very edge of this section, so that when we close this up, it will have and make wonderful contact right at the very edge there, and everything will look nice and seamless. It's kind of a recurring theme here when we're assembling things. So you want to take that long piece here and flip it over. Try to align it with the side opposite of the side that it was already hinged at, and then kind of run your finger along the very edges here with a very slight downward force to help that paper make contact with those very edges that we just painted with glue. Okay, and just hold that for just a moment. Make sure that that sets nicely. Okay, and looks like everything glued down beautifully. And well, this is going to be our bottom. This is our top because everything's already everything was already pre-connected. Everything looked good. Okay, and you'll notice that there's some cutouts here. There's a B and an F. F means the front, B means the back. There's a slight little difference in how this is centered here. So when we put the actual compartment on here, you know, I just want to make sure and be conscious of the fact that one side's the front, one side's the back. Okay. All right, so we can take this and just put this off to the side for a moment. Let's grab, in my case here, all of the white pieces. This is the actual compartment, and we're going to assemble this real quick. I've already got everything kind of pre-folded, and what we're going to do, let me flip this over so it makes a little more sense. We've got a tab here. We're going to put our glue on this tab, and of course, you know, work some of that glue out to the very edges here, so that when we connect these two pieces, everything sits nice and flush. Okay, so grab this other piece here and just get that nice and aligned. Kind of butt it up against, right up to the little score marks there. And just press and hold that down for just a moment while it grabs its initial hold. And then we can take it and fold it over on top of itself. And when we do that, you should notice that, well, actually, this is kind of a wonky shaped piece, so we're not really going to notice anything. But we do want to make sure that everything is holding nice and tight here at this seam. And give that an extra press or two. Okay. And then you can take this. Now we've got another tab here. We're going to apply our glue to. And again, work a little bit of glue out to the edge. And you can kind of paint that with your finger or whatever tool you want to use. And just get that joined to the other side. Make sure it's nice and lined up. That looks pretty good. And then just, you can move this out of the way, get your finger in there, and just press that down. Get that nice and aligned. There we go. And I don't think that we're going to be able to lay this down flat, but that's okay. Let me see here. Nope. That's going to have to stay up like that. But I can flip this over. We need to close up the bottom here. Okay. So kind of like we did when we built the main compartment here, or the main base for our carriage. I'm just going to put glue on these three tabs here and close up the bottom. Okay, no one's really going to see the bottom of this, so if you get a little sloppy, this is the time to make any mistakes with your glue. Okay, I'm going to spread that out nice and thin out to the edge, and then we'll close this up. And that will kind of help it hold its shape while we put the top on. Okay, so I'm going to flip this down. Focus on getting this side aligned first. Get it nice and centered, nice and out to the edge. The rest, the other two sides, should just kind of naturally fall into place. Just run your fingers, nice light pressure right along that very edge. And just press and hold that down for just a moment. And then what you can do is you can flip this over and then push down from the inside to get the rest of that tab to hold and make good contact there. Okay, there we go. Looks like we did pretty well there, I'd say. Okay, I've got maybe one little area here that's lifting up, but I can probably still just press and hold that down for a moment. Yep, that looks good. Okay, so now I've got to put the top on here. I've got two layers just to kind of reinforce it. Now when we do this, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start on one side, we're gonna anchor it on just one side. So it doesn't matter which side, just pick one of these tabs, the longer ones, and let's get our glue right on there. And then grab this piece and just get that nice and aligned with that tab that we just put our glue on. Make sure you get it right out to the very edge there. And just press that down and into place. And then if you need to, you can kind of, almost like you're making a pie crust, get your fingers in there and just kind of press them together. Just like that. Okay. You can flip this down and push down from the inside, add more force. Okay. All right, now, well, we kind of did this a couple times already. Once with the main platform, and then with the bottom, we're going to put our glue on the remaining 3 tabs. And make sure you get a little extra on there so that we can kind of paint that glue out to the very edge of the tab, so that when we do close this up, it looks nice and polished, as perfect as we could possibly get it. Okay, so again, I'm gonna pull this down, focus on getting it aligned on the side opposite of the side that it's already hinged on. Try to get it nice and center, and if you need to kind of tug it a little bit to pull it towards you, you can do that. Okay, and then the rest of this should just kind of fall into place. You want to try to apply that downward pressure all the way around, and then you can actually even do the little pie crust method all the way around as well, since we've got a nice opening in the top. And if you've got some areas that maybe are not sitting nice and flat, I'll show you how to fix that in a second, because I think I may have to do that, or maybe not. That looks pretty darn good, actually. So we've got, well, let's see, not even that bad actually. Maybe just in this little section here. If you notice that that piece that we just glued down isn't sitting nice and flush, you can take a little bit of glue, throw it on a scrap piece of paper, and just kind of shove it in between the 2 little areas, the 2 layers, this top piece and then the tabs, where we're trying to glue these pieces together. Paint a little bit of glue in between those layers, and then just press down and hold right in that little section where maybe it's not making the best contact. Give that a second to set, and then it'll look a lot better. It'll look nice and polished. And see that one's fine actually. Okay, so there we go. And now to, again, reinforce this a little bit, since we are going to be putting a lid on here, we're going to put one more layer on here. And we'll need to get our glue on this entire piece. Go nice and easy on the glue, but focus on trying to make sure that you get that glue out to the edges so that everything looks nice and seamless and doesn't come peeling apart. Almost looks like a little Polaroid. Okay, and since it's white on white, I'm not worried about making a huge mess with the glue. That'll be just fine. Okay, and you can kind of put this down on your surface like so, just so we don't go warping this thing and bending it unnecessarily. Now I want cheesecake. Okay, there we go. That looks pretty good. All right, see, it's a lot sturdier now, and it should stay nice and straight and flat for us. Okay, so next up is, well, we can put some panels on at this point and get our panels on. So this is, again, we only have 1 hole on this side. This is going to be the front, this is going to be the back, and we need to place this right on here. Okay, so let's get our glue on the back of this piece here and try to avoid getting glue on the cutout part of the vellum. We don't want any glue showing through there. We'll get kind of close to where the vellum is and maybe throw a little bit onto the vellum, but not Just make sure you don't encroach over the little cutout area. We don't want any unsightly glue showing through there. And then, whoa there, Nelly. That's not good. And just pop that right on there. Take a look at the little cutout. Make sure that you're not obstructing the cutout. Get it nice and centered, which mine is not. There we go. And hold that in place for a moment while it sets. Hopefully, after I dropped it, there was still enough glue that was tacky that will stay and keep this in place for me. I think we're okay. That looks nice. Okay, that looks good. Take a look at it from the side, make sure nothing's lifting up. I'd say that looks pretty good, okay. And we've got one more piece on this side. This one doesn't have any cutouts or anything like that, so you just simply need to put it in place. Just make sure you get it nice and centered. There should be a little bit of a white border, in my case white, going all the way around. Yeah, this glue's drying real quick. I checked before I started here. I'm at 17% humidity in my studio, so that doesn't help. It really just kind of leaches the moisture out of the glue. Okay, there we go. So this is going to be our front. We're going to end up putting a little bench on here, so our driver has somewhere to sit. Okay, you can actually put that down on your surface too, and press down from the inside to really get that to stick and avoid warping this piece. That looks good. Perfect. Okay. Okay, so next up, you're gonna find some vellum, and we're gonna put vellum over these little cutouts here, so that when the light shines through, we've got a nice purple coming through. All right, and you're gonna work around the perimeter of these cutouts. Go very easy on the glue here. We don't want it squirting in towards where the cutouts are. Okay, and then maybe just kind of work and do the shape of this piece here. Make sure that you place this on nice and accurate so that we're making sure that we get it over the little cutouts here. Okay, because ultimately what's going to happen next, just so that you guys aren't confused, this is going to be going over this, so that's going to look really nice once all said and done. Now, but before we do that, we have a little curtain that we're going to add, and we're going to actually glue this right onto the vellum piece like that. Okay, let me double check here, make sure, yeah. Okay, so we'll take this piece, and since we're gluing it right onto the vellum, again, you want to be kind of sparse with the glue here. You don't need a lot. It's this tiny little piece that needs very, very little glue to hold in place. And you can see the cutout of where the window is. You just want to get this kind of centered right in there, like that. And that just creates a nice little curtain look on our little piece here. Just give that a squeeze. Okay, so we'll do the same thing on the other side. Let's get our vellum in place. Just work that glue around the perimeter of the cutouts, like so. And then we'll pop this right into place, like that. And just hold that for a moment. The vellum is pretty porous, and it really grabs that glue pretty quickly, so you shouldn't have to wait too long for it to dry. Now I'm grabbing my little curtain on the other side, and I went a little heavy on the glue there. Whoops. Okay, and again, just get that nice and centered with the little arch there. Just like that. Beautiful. Okay. All right, so now we've got these two white pieces. We're going to actually glue these on first. Okay, and the idea here is to, first off, make sure that you get it nice and centered. I'm sorry, nice and flush with the bottom. And then also kind of take a look at the cutouts for the hearts, make sure that looks like it's in place. And there are some little markers on this to kind of help you with the positioning left to right. It'll kind of help you center it as well. Okay, so what we need to do here is, and actually you'll notice that there are also some markers up here, and that's to kind of help you figure out where to keep the glue. Okay, so we don't need to put any glue out here. It's kind of unnecessary. But you know what, before we do that, now let's get this on now. I'll show you how this works. So I'm going to start with my glue down here. I want to make sure that I get glue out to the bottom so that that stays nice and flush, and then just kind of keep the glue within the little areas there that are marked, because the other areas are going to be kind of sticking off, and it's really unnecessary to put glue there. It's just going to show up if you look at it from the side like that, so we don't want that. Just kind of keep it like that. Okay, and again, I'm starting at the bottom here, making sure that I've got it nice and flush at the bottom, while using these little guides here to make sure that I've got it centered as well. Okay, and I think it's a little off. There we go. And you can put that down on your surface and then push down from the inside to really get that to grip. And it should be, I think I did a pretty good job there. If it's off just a tad, I don't think it's going to be the end of the world. But ideally, you want to make sure that it does sit flat like that. Okay, so that looks good. Perfect. All right, let's flip this over. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Now, I guess technically what you could do, instead of worrying about putting glue on this, is you could technically put glue just on this section here, which maybe even makes more sense, so that you know exactly where that glue goes. But again, keep it away from the cutouts of the vellum. We don't want that glue seeping into those little cutouts, because that will be unsightly. Okay, and then you can work a little bit of glue out to the very edges here, just like that. And then again, I'm using the bottom as my guide initially to make sure that that's nice and flush down there, and making sure that everything is nice and centered as well, using those little guides. And I think it's pretty spot on. I can flip this down onto my surface and push down from the inside. Make sure that that gets good contact. Okay. There we go. So far, so good. There we go. And it's sitting nice and flat, which is perfect. All right, so that just leaves putting this on now to kind of finish this off, and you can see how it's starting to come together now. Before you move on here, double check your work, and you can see here I've got this little area. I didn't get enough glue on that. So I can take my scrap piece of paper here, throw a little extra glue on it, and just kind of paint some glue right up on this little corner, and just press that down and hold that in place while it sets. I don't want that piece lifting off at all. You want it to be nice and strong. Okay, that looks good. All right, so again, we can go ahead and put this on now, I think. Yeah, let's do it. Let's get this on. And for this, we just put our glue on this entire piece here. Make sure that you get that glue out to the very perimeter, the very, very edge here. Make sure that everything is making good contact, and just keep that glue out of the cutout areas. Well, I guess there's not really any surface to put glue on, but be careful when you're working around these areas. Just like that. Okay, you can kind of hold it through the window and get that all nice and centered and aligned. Make sure everything matches up nicely. Make sure it sits flat. Okay, and you can put that down on your surface, push down around the perimeter and then also from the inside. Whoops. Whoopsies. That's coming out nice. There we go. There we go. Beautiful. Okay. So far, so good. Flip this over and grab our other piece here. And get that in place. Now you can see, okay, so we're going to put this on just like we did the other side here. And again, you can put this down on your surface, press down around the perimeter here, just to make sure that everything's making good contact. And then you can also press from the inside. Okay, and there we go. Okay, so the carriage is pretty much done. And what we can do at this point, again, just make, actually, you know what? I'm gonna put the little seat on first before we get this glued on. So here is the structure for our little bench. And of course, we wanna make sure that we fold everything at the score marks. And this is gonna get glued onto the front. And then we can get this all glued together. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put some glue on these trapezoid shaped tabs. So get your glue on there right out to the edge, tuck that under and just press that down into place. And we've got some a nice little overlay to really jazz this up here in just a moment. Okay, and then we'll take and put glue on the other tab. Get that out to the edge as well. Kind of paint that. And just tuck that under. Get it lined up nicely. There we go. Now, then we're going to close this up. This is kind of a really large tab back here. So as I was saying, this is kind of how the bench is going to sit on this little piece here. And again, make sure that we take the tabs and glue them to the back of this so that they're not showing through in the front. So we're going to tuck this underneath. We're going to put glue on the tabs here. We can do one at a time. Just throw that one in place. Okay, just like that. And then I can fold this over, get some glue on this tab, and that'll keep everything together. And then we won't see the tabs from the front, which will make it look nicer. Okay, and then just tuck that over, give that a press. And there we go. Okay, so there's our little bench, and of course we've got a little overlay that is going to go like this, just to kind of pretty it up. Okay, so that's going to go over like that. Now I'm going to start with the center, so just move the sides out of the way for a second, and let's get our glue on the center of this, the front. And I've got little cotton fibers everywhere from when I was inking this. That's okay though. All right, so when you're putting this on, just make sure that it's nice and flush with the top and that you've got it nice and centered. So it should be nice and flush here. Okay, just hold that in place for a moment. And actually, while I'm holding it with my thumb here, I can fold this over and get my glue on this side here, and just fold that over, make sure it's nice and flush with the top, and just press and hold that in place for a moment. And then finally this side here. I got a bunch of gunk on my glue bottle here. And just putting that glue right up the very edge here, and maybe just a little bit underneath the little hearts. You don't need to go all the way down the scallop if you don't want to. There we go. And then we'll finish this off with this piece here. That's going to go right on top. Be nice and centered. Let's get our glue onto this piece. And we'll work that glue out to the edges, just like that. And pop that right on top. Make sure you get it nice and centered. There we go. And of course, pretty much all of the white glitter I inked for this project. Okay, and I'm just putting this down on my surface so I can push down from the inside to really help that glue set. You can use a pencil or a dowel, a pen, whatever, to really get into those corners there to help that make better contact. And there's our beautiful little bench that we're going to glue to the front. Now you'll notice that on this panel here, there are a couple little indicators for the height as to where to put that. And that's going to go just like that. Okay, so what we can do is we can put glue on this entire section here on this side and get that glue all the way around the perimeter. I'm going to hit that with my finger a little bit, thin it out, tack it up so it kind of adheres a lot quicker. Again, just get it nice and centered right there. Beautiful. And be careful pushing down on this because this part isn't really supported. Don't crush that on accident. And there we go. Okay. So now you can kind of start putting this together because all we have left to do after this is our lid, which isn't that difficult. I'm going to be a little more patient here with the top part of this. Here we go. Okay. All right, so again, with this guy here, remember there's an F and a B. That's the front, that's the back. The front has the little seat, okay, and we're gonna get it glued on like so. There are little guides there, little box, well, just little corners to show you exactly where this needs to sit to be nice and centered. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're going to put glue on the entire bottom here. I'm going to go kind of heavy. This is a point where I'm not really too concerned about warping any paper down here because you're not really going to see it. But we do want to make sure that we get plenty of glue on here, especially around the perimeter, so that when this does make contact with the main platform, it's going to hold permanently and nicely. Okay, so remember where your front is, remember where your back is. Here's my F, and I'm going to get that nice and aligned here. And I went pretty heavy on the glue, so it should not have dried up just yet. Make sure that you got it nice and centered, just like that. That looks pretty good. Okay, and then you can kind of give that a slight downward force, not too much. Gravity is going to do most of the work here. Just hold that in place and let that sit. Don't push down too hard. Give that a second. I think that's good. Okay, we'll kind of let this set before we move on. Because like I said, all we really have to do is we've got this little piece, we got to put our wheels on, and we're going to construct our lid at this point. So let's grab those pieces here. Here's the pieces and sections for our lid. There's a beautiful little crown that we've devised. And yeah, let's just get moving here. So of course, first thing we want to do is we want to fold everything at our score marks. This is the little lip for our lid, and this is the actual lid itself. So go ahead and fold everything at the score marks. Let's get that ready to go. Okay. And we're pretty much on the tail end of this thing. Actually went quicker than I thought it would, so that's not too bad. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is, well, before we do anything, let's grab there's a little panel that's going to go on top of this. Okay, now this is, eventually it's going to be a perfect box, so it doesn't really matter which direction you put this on. So let's just get this in place while everything's flat. It's a lot easier to work on pretty much anything when it's flat. So we'll take advantage of that. We get this little panel right on top here. Get that nice and centered. Should have a nice even border going all the way around. You'll notice that on this panel there's a little guide, and that is for our little crown. We'll be putting together here in just a moment. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now you'll notice that there are some little tiny triangular tabs here. We're going to use those to create this dimensional little lid. So I'm just throwing a little dot of glue right onto my little triangular tab. We're going to tuck it behind its neighboring piece here and just give that a quick squeeze. Shouldn't take long. Okay, moving right along to the next little triangular tab. Nice little dot of glue. Kind of hit that with my finger a little bit, and then just tuck it behind this wall. I'll call these walls, and give that a press. Okay. And as you probably have guessed, got two more to do to finish this thing. Nice little dot. Very thin. Tuck that behind and press. There we go. And the final little triangular tab here. I probably should have held that in place a little bit longer. You want to be more patient than I am. I'm just trying not to bore you. Okay, there we go. And the final little tab here. Thin that out a bit. Tuck that behind this wall and press that together. Scraping off a little bit of the excess glue there. It's kind of coming out chunky too. It's weird. Okay, there we go. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to push these little tabs in, and next we're going to do is take this piece and glue it to this section. Okay, so oh, look at that. I did not hold that piece in place long enough, and it came pulling apart. So time for my little scrap piece. I'm going to grab my glue, just paint a little bit of glue on there, and this time I need to hold it in place until it really sets. Typically, if you have to go back and re-glue things, it almost increases and doubles the amount of time you need to hold it for it to set, because you've got a thin layer of glue on there that's preventing the glue from penetrating into the fibers of the paper, and now it's kind of like glue trying to be glued to other glue instead of glue trying to hold two pieces of paper together. And this is why it's important to be patient so that you don't have to go back and fix things. Okay, so I'm going to grab these pieces here, and you want to fold these in half. Make sure that when you fold them, the two sections are sitting right on top of each other. Okay, and we'll fold our little tab there. Do the same thing on the other side, with the other one, I should say. Okay, and we're going to join these two pieces together to form one long strip. So go ahead and get your glue on this little guy here. And we can do this flat. Just line that up like that. Give that a press, and then you can fold it over onto itself. And you can see how when I fold it over, it's not sitting straight. So I'm just going to kind of adjust it and bring it together so that it's nice and straight. Let that glue set. Okay, there we go. And then we'll close it up, make it all one continuous piece here. We'll throw some glue right on our little tab here. And we can actually do this flat as well. That should just join precisely and exactly, sitting nice and flat. And this is kind of the little, well, a cleaner looking lip for this piece here. So we're going to put this, we're going to slide this on top of these tabs like that. And then we're going to glue these tabs to the interior, the inside part of this section here. So let's just throw a little bit of glue on here. Go very easy on the glue here, nice and thin. Pop that right on top. Oops. And then just push that tab up onto the inside of this piece that we just constructed, like that. Okay. And then we can fold these tabs down on the remaining 3 sides. Just go easy on the glue here. You don't need to put glue on the entire tab. The idea is it just needs to hold. And squeeze that into place. Okay. And moving right along to the next tab. Just like that. And then push that up into the inside of the piece we just constructed. And the last one here. Okay, and push that up against that inside piece. There we go. Okay, so this is what we end up with here. And this is going to go on top of this. And then this is going to be, they're going to put a little crown-shaped handle on here. And that's going to go right inside here to kind of close it off. So we have a nice little lid for this piece. So now we're going to join these 2 pieces together, but we're going to start by anchoring it to just one of these tabs initially. So go ahead and get your glue on just one of these tabs. And let's get that glue out to the edge. I'm going to need a little bit more than that. Just like that. And grab this piece and just line this up. Get it nice and aligned with just one side. Get it nice and centered. And just kind of press that down into place. Let it get its initial hold. And then we can take this and, well, maybe we should just push this down from the outside for now. Give that a second to hold. There we go. And then just be patient while that sets. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now we can flip this out. And let's get our glue on the 3 remaining tabs here so we can close this up. Okay. And this glue is drying really quick. I'm going to put it on a little bit thicker here. Okay, and then just press this down, get that nice and aligned with the side opposite of the side that's already hinged or anchored. And then just run your fingers along the perimeter. Make sure everything is making good contact. And just kind of keep doing that until everything is nice and set. You can actually kind of just try to hold all these sections down at the same time. And if we need to, we can always go back in and kind of clean things up if it's not making good contact. But so far it looks pretty good, I'd say. That looks good. Okay, well there's our lid. And I do have a little section here that needs a little extra love. So here's my scrap piece of paper. Just gonna throw a little bit of glue right on the very tip of that. And I'll just slide it right in between these two layers that are not playing nice. And just paint a little bit of glue right into there. And then just press and hold that for a few extra seconds until we're sure. And actually here, I did a really bad job. And this, folks, is totally normal and expected sometimes because we're only human and we make mistakes, but that doesn't mean we can't fix it up. Okay, so there is my glue on my scrap piece. I'm just gonna slide it in between these sections that are not holding, painting a little bit of glue onto one of the sides, and then just gonna press and hold until everything's making good contact. And we got a beautiful lid here. Just need to throw a crown on it. And before you know it, we'll be done. Okay, so there is our lid. And again, as I mentioned, we have a little crown piece that we're going to put together. And there's a series of little tabs at the bottom. That's what we're going to use to kind of hold its shape. So you want to get those folded, and then you'll notice that there are little score marks in between each of these little sections of our crown. And all we need to do, there's a tiny little tab there. You can see it right there. You need to put a little drop of glue right on that tab and then bring it in to the little crown piece that's on the opposite side and just get that joint together. Make sure it's nice and lined up. And just press and hold that for just a moment. Let it set. And then we do have well, we've got a little section that's going to go over that as well, like an overlay. And we've got this piece here we're going to use to hold this thing's shape. So to do that, let's start by putting glue on just one tab so that we can anchor this piece, kind of set the tone for the rest of the assembly. So take this piece, line it up, right up, pretty much butting up to the little score mark there. You don't want to go over though. Also make sure that it's centered. Okay, and just hold that for a moment while it sets. So you're going to end up with something like this. Those are the rest of the tabs. We've got one tab connected. Give that a moment to set. Okay, and then we can put glue on the remaining 5 tabs here. Just a nice little dot, and then I'm going to take my finger and just kind of dab that, thin it out, get it out to the edges, just like that. And we can close this shape up. Now, focus on aligning it with the side opposite of the side that it's already connected to and hinged at. And then the rest of it should just kind of fall into place. Just kind of work your fingers around clockwise or counterclockwise and just kind of squeeze those tabs to this little section here. Okay, just like that. There we go. That looks good. And now one thing we want to do, because this is going to kind of curve out a little bit, grab a dowel or something, and you want to kind of train this to kind of stick out a little bit. Okay, not a lot. Don't overdo it. Just a tiny little bit. You want to kind of train it outward. Not a lot, just a tiny bit. Just like that. Okay, just like that. And here's our little overlay piece. There are a series of little score marks in between each section, just like we had on the red section. So you want to go ahead and fold that at the score marks, just like that. And what we're going to do, now this part, I'm not worried about training this part. We're just going to kind of apply it, and it will kind of automatically fold into place. And so what we want to do is we're going to start somewhere in the center. So pick one of the sections in the center, and let's get our glue on one of these. So again, we're kind of just anchoring this first. And it doesn't matter which one you start on here, just pick one and glue that down. Make sure you've got it nice and centered. Make sure it's making good contact. Okay, there we go. Just like that. And then you can kind of fold this over and just begin putting glue on the next section. And fold that over onto the next red section of the crown. And try to make sure that you've got the bottom somewhat flush with the base or the bottom of the red section as well. Okay, and then we can again fold this over, apply glue to the next section. And I could probably finish it off with the last section there. So I've got glue on two of these. I'll get this one in place, and I'll get this one in place. And just kind of press down, make sure it's nice and centered. Try to get it flush with the bottom as well. Okay, that looks pretty darn good. Whoops. Okay, and then we can go over to this side here where we haven't put any glue down yet. We've got two more sections to glue down. And I'm just going to do both of them real quick. Nice and easy with the glue. Kind of dab it a little bit if you got too much. Get it nice and aligned with that red section of the crown. And then this last section should meet up perfectly with the other side there. Just press and hold that in place for a moment. Okay, and there's our beautiful crown. Now what we're going to do, I've got this little foam ball that I painted purple. I'm going to pop that in there. I'm going to use some hot glue, and then I'm going to take some heart-shaped rhinestones, glue two of them together, back to back, and just kind of stick it right into the top of the foam ball. So take a look at the final photo of that on our website to see what that looks like. But nevertheless, so what we're going to do next is we're just going to glue this down onto the top here. You'll notice that there are some little indicators there to help you with the positioning, so it's nice and centered. So get your glue on the bottom of your crown. Okay, and just get that lined up nicely. Make sure it's nice and centered. There we go. And just press that down. Now again, that little ball is optional, but I think it would look really cool. So you can do that or add whatever you want in there. Okay, so there we go. There's our beautiful lid for our carriage. Okay, and that's it. No, it's not. We still have to put our wheels on, and we've got a few more little pieces here. There's a little hitch here. Okay, and the way this works is that's just gonna, you'll notice that there's a little score mark on here. And I believe we have, I thought there was a indicator there, but there's not. That's okay. We just need to get that centered, and this part just kind of hangs off. So just put glue on this section here, the section that has a little heart on it. Okay, and then just get that nice and centered and press that down onto the surface. There we go. And then this section here is just kind of dangle off like that. It's kind of like a little heart. Okay. And then we've got this section here. And that is going to go on the other side, and we do actually have a little indicator here to help you with the positioning of this. There's a series of little, I'll call them valleys and mountains. And actually, you know what, we're just gonna put glue, whoops. I'm just gonna put glue right here on this section here. Just kind of keep it in between or inside of the little areas where we've got the little identifiers. Okay, and just pop that right into place using those little guides like that. And I got a little glue in an area that didn't need glue. I'm just going to wipe that off. That happens. Not a big deal. Okay. And that just leaves our wheels, which are still underneath my mat here. We'll get those in place. Now, one thing to kind of keep in mind is that this, again, is the front, because we've got the little bench there. And the front is going to have the smaller wheel. There are also some little markers here to help you with the positioning of all of this. And then there's one little marker here to show you kind of where the front of the wheel is going to go. And this section here, this wheel, is going to kind of come off of the main structure. Okay, so what we really need to do at this point is kind of focus on making sure that we put glue in the right sections. Okay, so obviously, if we take a look here, we're going to need a little bit of glue on just the center part of the wheel. These two little points here, this little circle, and then again, let me make sure I'm doing this right. Okay, so my best advice for this is going to be to anchor the center part first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put glue on the little circle part in the center, and then a little bit of glue up on these little points here, these little spikes. And I'm just going to keep that glue just right there. Okay, and again, you've got some little identifiers here. Just make sure that the small wheel is towards the front, and use those little markers to help you position this piece accurately. Okay. And just want to make sure that I'm getting this right. That looks good right about there. There. Okay, and just press and hold that little center section in place. Let that set. And then we can just kind of lift this up and add glue to the back of the wheel, just to make sure that we don't get glue in spots we don't need it. So I'm just kind of taking a look at what section of this wheel is actually making contact with the main platform, and that is where I'm going to be applying my glue. I'm going to go real thin, spread that glue out, and just push that into place, just like that. There we go. And just hold that for a second. And then the same thing on this side here. Just take a look and see where we're making contact. Well, we're definitely making contact here. Could possibly help if I hold it like this. There we go. There we go. And that is where it was making contact. That's where I'm adding my glue, and I'm just going to hold that in place for a moment. There we go. Beautiful. And let's see here. Yeah, that looks good. Again, the key here is just to make sure that the centerpiece is lined up with the little markers there. Then everything else should just kind of fall into place, and I'll show you here that it does. So we're going to do the same thing again. Again, just make sure that the small wheel is towards the front, and we're going to begin again by putting glue on just this little circle, and then maybe halfway up these little spikes. And use those little markers. Those are your guides. Pardon my head for a second. Make sure that I'm getting this lined up correctly. There we go. And I'll press and hold that in place for a moment. Let that set. And then we'll kind of flip it over and just add glue where we need it. You can always use a little scrap piece of paper as well to get the glue into the areas that you need it. So let's do that. Let's flip it like this. Okay. And I'm gonna peel this down and just add a little squeeze of glue right into these little areas where I know that the wheel is making contact. There we go. And the last section here. Whoops. Now I wasn't patient with that, and now this part kind of moved a little bit on me. So there we go. Just adding a little bit of glue to these areas where I know it's making contact. And I'll press that down into place. Okay, so I do need to be patient while this glue sets before I actually let it sit down on the wheels. Just looking at it from this angle, that looks great. Everything looks nice and lined up. And that pretty much wraps it up. I'm gonna actually just hold this while I put it down. And you can see that, there you go, beautiful. And just make sure to give that ample time to dry before you let it actually sit on the wheels. Let that glue really set. And then finally, I'm just gonna hit this with a little extra bling. I've got a bunch of heart-shaped rhinestones, and I'm just gonna add some in various places. So take a look at the final photo on the website to see where we've added some nice embellishments. And again, this is ready for a gift, ready for its day in the light as a centerpiece at a birthday party, a sweet 16, whatever it may be. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the process. If you did, please take a moment and hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. And when you hit subscribe, also hit that little bell so that you get updates and notifications whenever we release a new assembly video for our paid or free files. And if you make this or anything from our new Valentine's bundle, we'd love to see it. So head on over to your Facebook page and do a search for Dreaming Tree Group, or just type in the little handy URL that you see below me now. And you can join myself and the 17,000 plus other dreamers that inspire us daily. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to crafting with you again.